My boyfriend betrayed me with his roommate, who he insisted was like a sister to me. Imagine waking up in your boyfriend's best friend's bed, his grandmother's ring on your finger. I thought my life was falling apart. But what if that epic betrayal was actually the universe finally showing me what I deserved all along? For 2 years, I was completely smitten with Blake. Everyone, and I mean everyone, told me I was too good for him, but I just brushed it off. They're just jealous, I'd think. He was a bartender, a musician in a weekend cover band. Charming, you know? The whole package. Or so I convinced myself. Then there was Tessa, his roommate, his best friend, or as he swore up and down, just like a sister. Yeah, a sister who walked around their apartment in nothing but a towel. A sister who made him breakfast in her underwear. A sister who casually sat on his lap during movie nights while I was, his girlfriend. Anytime I brought it up, Blake would scoff. You're being insecure, he'd say. You're crazy. And I, like an idiot, would believe him. He'd cancel our dates if Tessa had a bad day at work. He'd bolt from my place in the dead of night because Tessa needed someone to talk to about her latest ex. I once got a huge promotion at my accounting firm, a massive deal for me, and he completely forgot to congratulate me. Why? Because Tessa got a parking ticket and was upset. A parking ticket. I loved him, though. I really did. And I truly believed that relationships meant work. Compromise. Sacrifices. My sacrifices, apparently. His best friend, Danny, tried to warn me. He owned a small construction company and was just solid. Danny was always the one who showed up when Blake flaked. Like the time Blake forgot to pick me up from the airport because Tessa apparently wanted to go shopping. Or when Blake ditched me at his own band show because Tessa suddenly felt sick and needed care. Danny would appear with coffee, with a ride, never saying a bad word about Blake. Just, "Are you okay?" he'd ask. I'd tell him to stop worrying. Blake and I were solid. Danny would just nod. "I'll be around if you need anything." Blake, though? He started getting weird about Danny. "He's trying to steal you," Blake would accuse. Nice guys like Danny are actually the worst. They pretend to care. I defended Danny, but Blake insisted I was naive, that Danny definitely wanted to sleep with me. To avoid the endless arguments, I just stopped mentioning when Danny helped me. Last Friday was Blake's band's biggest show yet, at this huge downtown venue. I bought a brand new outfit, invited all my friends to come support him. Blake mentioned Tessa would be there too. "She's basically our unofficial manager," he shrugged. Whatever that meant. I got there early to snag a good spot. Saw Blake's car already in the lot. Okay, great, he's here. I went backstage, hoping to give him a quick good luck kiss. What I found instead, my stomach dropped. The world tilted. Blake was in the green room with Tessa. She was on top of him, and they were both half-dressed. Blake saw me, and I swear to God, he actually said, "It's not what it looks like." Tessa just smirked a cruel, knowing look. "Now I know why Blake kept her around," she sneered. Blake stammered, tried to say Tessa was just helping him relax before the show, that it meant nothing, and that I was overreacting as usual. Overreacting? I turned on my heel and walked straight to the bar across the street. I started taking tequila shots like they were water, trying to drown the disbelief. 2 years. 2 years wasted on someone who was clearly sleeping with his roommate the entire time. An hour later, Danny appeared. He said Blake had texted the band's group chat that I'd gone crazy and stormed off for no reason. Danny knew that wasn't true. He came looking. By then, I was absolutely destroyed. Crying, drunk, sobbing about how stupid I was, how I couldn't see what everyone else apparently could. Danny tried to get me to eat something, but I just kept ordering more drinks. I remember telling him he was right about everything, that I should have listened. I remember him trying to get my phone when I wanted to call Blake. I remember throwing up in the parking lot while he held my hair back. After that, nothing. I woke up in a bed that wasn't mine. I was wearing an oversized t-shirt that said Henderson Construction, Danny's company. Danny himself was asleep on the floor, curled up with a blanket and a pillow. On the nightstand, there was water, aspirin, and toast. And on my finger, a ring. Not an engagement ring, no. It was his grandmother's class ring, the one he always wore on his pinky. I sat bolt upright, confused. Danny woke immediately, asking if I needed to throw up again. What happened? I mumbled, looking at the ring. Why do I have this? He explained that I'd been trying to call Blake all night. To distract me, he'd given me his ring to fidget with instead of my phone. I'd refused to give it back. You kept saying it was prettier than anything Blake ever gave you, he said, looking embarrassed. Which, honestly, wasn't hard because Blake never gave you anything. He told me he'd slept on the floor after making sure I was okay. Nothing happened between us, he clarified, almost too quickly. My sister's in the guest room, if you want to confirm. I called her to come over so you wouldn't wake up alone with just me here and get the wrong idea. Just then, his sister Lori walked in with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. He was on the floor all night, she confirmed, handing me a cup. I checked on you every hour. She added that Danny had been worried sick. Kept saying he should have told me about Blake sooner. Told me what? I asked, a fresh wave of dread washing over me. Lori hesitated, then said, Danny knew Blake was sleeping with Tessa for at least 6 months. He just didn't know how to tell you without looking like he was trying to break you up. My phone rang, startling me. It was Blake. He launched into a tirade. You embarrassed me at my show, he practically screamed. Tessa's upset you invaded their space. Their space. He actually called it their space. He said if I apologized to Tessa and accepted their relationship dynamic, we could work things out. I looked at Danny, who was pretending not to listen while making breakfast. I looked at his grandmother's ring, still on my finger. I need to call Blake back, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, and break up with him properly. Danny looked up over the rim of his coffee cup. Maybe eat something first, he suggested gently. Big decisions need clear heads. You had a rough night. Lori brought over a plate of pancakes. Drunk you was hilarious last night, she chuckled. Apparently you kept holding up Danny's ring and announcing to anyone who'd listen that it was prettier than anything Blake ever gave you, which you know was true. He never gave you anything but excuses and disappointment. She said I'd refuse to give the ring back, clutching it to my chest, declaring it mine now. Danny, blushing, said I could keep it as long as I wanted. I twisted the ring on my finger. Suddenly I felt lighter, so much lighter without Blake's constant weight dragging me down. I picked up my phone. I listened to Blake's voicemail on speaker. His voice was angry, sharp. You embarrassed me at my show, he snarled. Tessa's really upset you invaded their space like that. Their space. He called it their space. Again. If you apologize to both of them and accept their relationship dynamic, he condescended, we can probably work things out. He made it sound like he was doing me a favor, like I should be grateful he'd even consider taking me back after I caught him cheating. Danny's jaw tightened beside me. Lori muttered something under her breath about Blake being delusional. I looked at Danny across the kitchen table, and for the first time I saw him. Really saw him. He'd been showing up for me for 2 years. 2 years. While Blake couldn't even be bothered to pick me up from the airport. Danny brought me coffee when Blake left me stranded. Danny listened when Blake forgot to congratulate me on my promotion. Danny was the one actually there while Blake was busy with Tessa. I called Blake back. He answered on the first ring, smug. Glad you came to your senses, he started. I cut him off. We're done, I said, my voice firm. You can have whatever twisted relationship you want with Tessa, because I'm not interested in being part of it anymore. His voice changed from smug to pure rage in a second. You're overreacting like always, he yelled. You knew Tessa was important. You agreed to be understanding. I agreed to nothing, I interrupted, except being lied to and disrespected for 2 years. He kept rambling, saying I was throwing away our relationship over nothing. I hung up mid-sentence. Danny was trying and failing not to smile. Lori actually cheered. I've been waiting 2 years for you to dump that loser. She high-fived me across the table. This calls for celebration pancakes. They tasted like freedom. I still had a key to Blake's apartment, and he had one to mine. We needed to exchange things before this got messy. Danny offered to go with me to Blake's, so I wouldn't have to face him alone. Lori, ever practical, offered to go to my apartment in case Blake showed up there, trying to cause drama. I've been waiting for an excuse to tell Blake exactly what I think of him, she declared with a grin. We finished breakfast. I borrowed some of Lori's clothes. Mine from last night reeked of tequila and regret. Danny grabbed his truck keys and we headed out. The drive to Blake's felt different. I wasn't nervous about his mood or Tessa's snide comments. I just wanted my stuff and to be done. We pulled up, saw Blake's car. Danny parked. Want me to come up? He asked. Yes, I said. I knew Blake would try to manipulate me alone. We walked to the second floor. I knocked. Tessa answered, wearing Blake's shirt, nothing else. That same smirk. What do you want? She drawled. I handed her Blake's key. My stuff. Her smirk widened. Blake already took your things to your apartment. About an hour ago. She leaned against the doorframe. He figured you'd come crawling back once you calmed down and realized what you were giving up. What exactly was I giving up? I asked, my voice flat. A guy who knew how to have fun, she said, who didn't expect her to be boring and jealous all the time. Danny stepped forward, pulling me away. We're leaving, Tessa called after us. Blake's better off without someone as uptight as you. We drove to my apartment. On my doorstep were black trash bags. Blake had dumped my belongings outside, like I was garbage. Lori was already there, furious, starting to bring the bags in. I can't believe he had the nerve to treat your things like this, she fumed. We carried everything inside. My clothes were wrinkled, shoved in without care. My books had bent covers. My toiletries from his bathroom were thrown in loose, caps off, leaking everywhere. I found the 3 things Blake had given me in 2 years. A cheap necklace, a mug with a stupid joke, a bar keychain. He'd taken them all back. Danny watched me pull out the pathetic items. My grandmother's ring is still on your finger, he said quietly. You can keep it as long as you want. It already meant more to me than anything Blake had ever given. My phone rang. Savannah from work. She'd heard through friends about the show, wanted to make sure I was okay. I told her everything. Finding Blake with Tessa, getting drunk, waking up at Danny's. I never liked him anyway, Savannah declared. I always said you deserved way better than some bartender who couldn't even remember your promotion. She said the whole office talked about how Blake didn't show up to the company party I'd invited him to last month because Tessa needed him to help her move furniture. Everyone thought you were too good for him, Savannah said, but nobody wanted to say anything because you seemed happy. I wasn't happy, I confessed. I was just used to making excuses for him. Savannah invited me to dinner at her place with some work friends. You need to be around people who actually appreciate you, she insisted, not sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. What time? I asked, feeling a spark. 6, she said, and bring Danny if he wants to come. I looked at Danny, who was now helping Lori neatly fold my clothes. Want to go to dinner at Savannah's? I asked. He smiled. Sure, if you want me there. After. Tidying up, Danny drove me to Savannah's place. She lived in a nice complex with a pool and actual parking. Savannah opened the door and pulled me into a hug. Then she saw Danny. Anyone who treats her this, well, is absolutely welcome in my home, she declared, pulling him inside too. For women from my firm sat around a table laden with pizza and wine. Michelle from accounts payable, Jenna from tax prep, Kira from HR. Danny stood awkwardly by the door until Savannah practically dragged him to the couch. Michelle immediately launched into a story about an ex who maxed out 3 credit cards on his side girlfriend. Jenna topped that with an ex who faked a business trip to Vegas but took his co-worker to Hawaii. Kira's ex borrowed her car to help his sick mother, but she found hotel and dinner receipts for 2. Everyone looked at me. I told them about finding Blake with Tessa. Michelle slammed her wine glass down. Blake sounds like trash. Jenna asked how long Tessa lived there. 2 years, I said. The entire time we were dating. Kira shook her head. I can't believe you put up with that. I explained Blake always made me feel crazy for being bothered. Savannah refilled everyone's glasses. Classic manipulator, she said, convinced her normal reactions were overreactions. Danny sat quietly on the couch, scrolling on his phone. Michelle glanced at him. Are you 2 together now? My face burned. No, I said quickly. Danny looked up. No, he echoed. Savannah gave me a look that said she didn't believe either of us. The conversation moved on, but I kept noticing Danny watching me from across the room. The next week, I threw myself into work, staying late to avoid my empty apartment. Danny texted me every morning, need coffee? Lori invited me to dinner twice. Blake's texts started constantly. Long paragraphs about how I'd ruined his band's biggest opportunity by causing drama. Messages about how Tessa understood him in ways I never did, how she actually supported his music. Rants about how his bandmates were mad because venue owners heard about the backstage incident. I deleted each message without responding, but they kept coming. One night, I was at Danny's helping him pick out tile for his bathroom remodel when my phone buzzed with another Blake essay. This one claimed the band might break up because nobody wanted to work with him anymore, and it was all my fault for making a scene. Danny saw my face. What's wrong? I showed him. He read it, jaw clenched. Want me to talk to him? He offered. No, I said. He has no right to blame you for the consequences of his own actions, Danny stated. I agreed, but the messages still bothered me. 3 days later, Blake sent a text saying he might consider taking me back if I posted an apology on social media. He wanted me to say I'd overreacted and misunderstood his relationship with Tessa, publicly, to recover his reputation. I stared at my phone screen. Something shifted inside me. Danny was making breakfast. I walked over and showed him. He read it. His face went red. He asked if I was okay. I realized I wasn't hurt anymore. Just angry. Really angry that Blake thought he could cheat on me for months, then demand I apologize for catching him. I blocked his number right there. Danny watched. Good, he smiled. I felt lighter than I had in days. Danny called me the next afternoon. Want to see my office? He asked. My business partner will be there. You can meet the guy who puts up with me every day. I drove to Henderson Construction, south side of town. Small building, trucks outside. Danny met me at the door, led me inside. Desks, filing cabinets, blueprints everywhere. A tall guy with graying hair stood up. Jasper, his partner of 8 years. A woman with short, dark hair at another desk. Evelyn, Jasper's wife, their bookkeeper. Evelyn stood and hugged me like an old friend. Danny's talked about you for years, she exclaimed. So glad you finally dumped that musician. I laughed nervously. Danny looked embarrassed. Jasper showed me around, explaining their projects. Evelyn offered coffee. I said yes. She poured 2 cups, then told Jasper and Danny to go look at blueprints or something. She led me to a small break room, sat across from me. I need to tell you something, she said. I sipped my coffee waiting. Danny has been in love with you since the day Blake introduced you 2 years ago, she said. My heart gave a little lurch. He never said anything because you were with Blake, and Danny didn't want to be that guy who tried to steal his friend's girlfriend. She continued, watching you stay with Blake while he treated you badly, it nearly killed Danny. She smiled. This past week, having you around the office and at his house, it's the happiest I've seen him in 2 years. She stood up, went back to her desk, as if she hadn't just turned my entire world sideways. I sat there, holding my coffee, processing. Then I started noticing things about Danny I'd somehow missed before. How he always brought me coffee, exactly how I liked it, without asking. How he remembered details about my work projects and asked about them days later. How he actually listened when I talked about spreadsheets and tax codes instead of his eyes glazing over, like Blake's always did. These weren't new things. Danny had been doing them for 2 years. I was just too focused on making things work with Blake to see what was right in front of me. I caught myself watching Danny as he worked on his laptop at the coffee shop near my apartment. He looked up, smiled, and something warm spread through my chest. This was different from anything I felt with Blake. This felt steady, real, safe. 2 weeks after leaving Blake, I ran into his bandmate, the drummer at the grocery store. I could never remember his name. He stopped his cart next to mine in produce. "I'm sorry about what happened," he said. The whole band knew about Blake and Tessa. We all felt bad watching Blake treat you like garbage, but nobody knew how to tell you. He even said they were relieved I was gone because Blake had been impossible to work with, canceling practices, showing up late. Half the band wanted to kick him out, but it was complicated. I thanked him, started to push my cart away. He stopped me. "You should know. Blake's telling everyone a different story. He says you cheated on him with Danny, and that's why you broke up. He's painting himself as the victim." My hands gripped the cart handle so hard my knuckles turned white. "Don't worry," the drummer added. "Nobody believes Blake's version anyway. Everyone knows he's full of it." But I was furious. Blake was rewriting history to make himself look better. I finished shopping in a rage. That night I sat on my couch. I opened social media, typed out a simple statement. Blake and I broke up because he was unfaithful and I'm moving forward with my life. I hit post before I could second-guess myself. Within an hour, 3 of Blake's friends sent me private messages. One said he'd walked in on Blake and Tessa making out at a party 6 months ago. Another saw them leaving a hotel last summer. The third said Blake brought Tessa to his birthday dinner and introduced her as his girlfriend while I was out of town for work. All 3 offered to back up my story. I screenshotted them just in case. My phone rang an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Blake's voice came through, screaming that I was ruining his reputation. "Tessa's really upset about people judging them," he yelled. "You have no right to post about our private business." I let him yell for a minute. Then I cut him off. "You ruined your own reputation by cheating and lying about it," I said, my voice steady. "And if Tessa's upset, she should have thought about that before sleeping with someone else's boyfriend." Blake started to argue, but I hung up and blocked that number, too. My hands were shaking, but I felt good. Really good. Like I'd finally taken back some control over my own story. A month passed. Danny called. "Want to get dinner at that Italian place downtown?" he asked. "To celebrate 1 month since you left Blake." It seemed like a weird thing to celebrate, but also kind of sweet. I put on a dress and actually felt excited about going out, which hadn't happened in forever. Danny picked me up right on time. Still new enough to surprise me. We got a table by the window and ordered wine. Danny kept fidgeting with his napkin, folding it and unfolding it while we looked at the menus. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Just nervous," he admitted. "Nervous? Around me? We've basically spent every day together for a month." He took a deep breath. "Evelyn told me she talked to you about my feelings." My stomach did a little flip. I put down my menu and looked at him. I've been thinking about what Evelyn said. I confessed. A lot. I told him I realized he'd been the best part of my life for 2 years. He showed up for every important moment while Blake couldn't even remember my promotion. He drove me to the airport at 5 a.m. for business trips. He brought me soup when I was sick. He listened to me complain about difficult clients and actually remembered their names. I was an idiot, I said, a little teary. I was an idiot not to see what was right in front of me this whole time. Danny reached across the table and took my hand. I noticed I was still wearing his grandmother's ring. It had become such a part of me, I often forgot it was there. He looked at the ring, then at me. I gave you that ring because, even drunk, you knew you deserved something beautiful, he said, his voice soft. I've wanted to give you everything for so long, but I didn't know how to tell you without ruining our friendship or making things weird. He paused. Watching you with Blake was torture, but I stayed close. I couldn't stand the thought of not being in your life at all. I squeezed his hand. I want to try this, I whispered. Really try. He smiled, bigger than I'd ever seen him smile. We finished dinner. He drove me home and kissed me goodnight at my door. It was different from kissing Blake. It felt safe and exciting all at the same time. We started dating officially. It was completely different from being with Blake. Danny showed up when he said he would. If we made plans for 7, he was there at 7, not 9:30 with some excuse about band practice. He remembered things I told him, like how I mentioned loving this specific coffee shop across town, and surprised me by taking me there on a Saturday morning. He treated me like I mattered. He asked about my day and actually listened. He met my friends, made an effort to remember their names and jobs. When I had a big presentation at work, he sent flowers to my office. Blake never sent me flowers once in 2 years. Savannah and my work friends loved Danny. They kept saying, we knew this would happen. Savannah said she called it the night of her dinner party, just seeing how Danny looked at me. Another coworker said anyone with eyes could see Danny was crazy about me and Blake was an idiot. I invited Danny to Sunday dinner at my parents' house. My mom loved him immediately. So polite, she kept saying, and he actually helped clear the table. My dad talked to him about construction and business. After dinner, my mom pulled me aside. This, she said, squeezing my hand, this is what a real partner looks like. Someone who shows up and treats you with respect. She apologized for not saying something about Blake sooner. I didn't want to push you away by criticizing your choices. I hugged her. I got there eventually. 3 months after Blake, I was genuinely happy for the first time in years. Danny and I planned a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. I realized, looking at places online, that I never did anything like this with Blake. Every time I suggested a trip, it was band practice or Tessa needed help or some other excuse. Danny and I actually booked the cabin, made real plans. We were going in 2 weeks, and I was counting down the days. I saw on social media that Blake's band was playing at a bar across town. Danny noticed me looking at my phone. Want to go? He asked. Prove you're over it. I looked up at him. I don't need to prove anything, I said. Honestly, I don't care what Blake is doing anymore. I don't wonder if he regrets losing me. I don't check his social media. I was just done. Danny smiled. That's when I knew you were really free. We were at his place one night, watching an action movie, feet tucked under me, his arm around my shoulders. The movie ended, and we just sat there in the quiet. Danny turned to me. I want to take my grandmother's ring to a jeweler, he said softly. Have it properly sized for you. I looked down at the ring on my finger. It was still a little too big. I usually wore it on my middle finger. Then I looked back at Danny, and I realized he wasn't just talking about the class ring anymore. My heart started beating faster. I know it's fast, he said, looking at me with so much love. But I've loved you for 2 years already. When you know someone's right, you just know. I said yes. I said yes before he even finished asking. Because sometimes the right person was there all along. You just needed to wake up and see them. So, tell me, have you ever been so blinded by a relationship that you missed something truly amazing right in front of you? What finally made you see the truth? I really want to know.